Hey, how's it going? Alex here from IdeaSpot. In today's WordPress tutorial, we are using the Kadence theme and we are customizing our blog page and our blog posts. So I'm going to show you two methods to do this. First one is obviously using the Kadence theme customizer to set up a blog page like this. And the other method is using the Gutenberg editor to set up blog pages like this, where we can have full customizability over the content on the page. We can display posts on any page using this method. Here, I've added the latest post to the home page, for example. And we're also going to learn how to put blog categories into our header menu. For example, I've put the design category into the header menu here and just displayed the design posts. So if all this sounds interesting, then keep watching. So we're obviously going to be using the Kadence theme for this tutorial. You can grab that from cadencetheme.com. Just grab the free download link there. It'll download into your downloads folder. And we are using the agency starter template. Check out my previous tutorial. I'll put the link in the description where we set up a starter template on Kadence. That is the agency starter template in this tutorial. The other thing you'll want to do under your settings in the dashboard, under permalinks, is use the post name permalink settings. These links look a lot better, and these are also better for your search engine optimization. So make sure that's set up and click Save Changes if not. And the only additional plugin that we're going to be using during this tutorial is Yoast Duplicate Post. We're going to use that to duplicate the pages for different categories of blog posts. So go ahead and grab this one. There are other similar plugins that do the same thing, but I quite like this one. 3 million other people also like it. So go ahead, search for that, install and activate that. We can actually remove it after you've finished building the website. That's totally fine as well if you like to minimize the number of plugins you have installed. Now let's get started on customizing our blog page. Now this is the default blog page you get with this starter template, and this page is edited using the theme customizer. So I'm going to hit customize there and load up the customizer. You can get to the actual blog settings by going to blog posts, and this is the archive layout. So this is where the settings that control this page are kept. So anything we change here under the general and the design tab is going to affect our blog page archive layout here. Now, the reason the blog is controlled by the theme customizer is under our WordPress settings, under reading, we have the post page defined to blog. Now that can be any page you want. By default, it's defined to the blog page. And that means the blog is controlled by the theme customizer. Now, it is also possible to build blog post pages on any page of your WordPress site using the WordPress Gutenberg editor. We will get to that in a second, but first let's cover off the theme customizer method. So the first setting that we've got here is the archive title. By default, it is turned on. We can turn that off and it will look like this. And because we're using a transparent header, we can't actually see our menu and our header there. We would actually have to add some background. So let's go to design and add a site background color to this page. So if we just made it blue, that looks pretty good. We've got a simple header and a blue background and our posts layered on top there. So that's pretty cool. I actually prefer the standard layout. So we can go back to that, turn the archive title back on, and we've got two choices. This is the default. We've got above the content or in the content. In the content, same deal. We need to go to the design and we need to add some site background color to make things visible for our readers. So again, I really prefer the system that they set up by default. So let's leave it like that. What we can do is we can edit the gradient behind that title. So we can go to design and they've got a gradient set up there. We can click on these colors and we can take colors from our palette and change accordingly like that. So quite simple to do. Let's go and use that, for example. I actually like using the two main color and the accent color, make the nicest looking gradient in this case. So let's just leave it like that. Okay, let's head back to general and see what else we can do here. So the container width, I'd always tend to leave that on standard. You can change it to full width. It doesn't really make any difference because we're using a centered header there. All that will do is move the title over to the left. If it was on standard, you'd get a standard margin there as well. So that's the only real difference. I'm just going to leave that as it is. The container minimum height is a good one to fiddle with if you want to change that amount of space you've got on the border there. I think by default it looks pretty good, but depending on what you've got actually in there, you might want to change that. But I think we're leaving it as it is pretty good. Okay, the next thing we can look at here are the title elements. So by default, breadcrumbs off. You can turn breadcrumbs on and you'll get those breadcrumbs for your categories there. And we can go to design and we can actually change the colors of the breadcrumbs. That's our hover color. Let's make gray and let's use white for the initial color. So when we hover, we'll get gray. We could make the gray into a blue, for example. There we go. And that gives us our links. Those are good for search engine optimization, but I don't think they look very tidy myself. I'd rather just turn those off, to be honest. I like leaving them off. The other things we can do in here, we can turn the title off. If you turn the title off, you'd probably want to change that container minimum height to suit that size as well if you're doing that. But I actually preferred it before. I might roll that back and leave it with that blog title on there. I thought that looked good. Let's head back to our blog post and archive layout. There is a option for meta description. We're not using meta description on this blog, so we don't need to use that. There's archive layout. Now this is the archive down here. So this is the normal layout. You can make it narrow, which can be good for some layouts. There's full width. And if you're using sidebars, there's left sidebars, right sidebars. Sidebars aren't used that much because of mobile view. Mobile view doesn't really have enough space to use a sidebar and have a column of content. So I think just leaving it on normal is better. And further on, we've got the boxed or unboxed style. So you can see this is the unboxed, and the boxed has a slight change in the background color there. If we actually go to design, we could see the slight background a bit more clearly. If we did that, you can see that if we go back to our general layout there, we can see the difference between having unboxed doesn't have that background. This has the background color, but that background color was quite subtle before, so it wasn't completely obvious. I might just change that back to the soft gray, but I quite like this. But that's the difference between boxed and unboxed. And we have archive columns, so it's on two. Two looks pretty good usually. There is the option of doing one, that picture looks way too big. If you were doing that, you'd go image placement beside, and that has quite a nice list look. If you were using this sort of layout, I think that's quite good, but the default 2, it looks good. And there's also 3 for maybe some magazine styles would look good in that, but I think I'll go with 2. The default option looks the best in my opinion. And the last options are the post item layout. So that is all this stuff in here. So you can turn the featured image on or off. So that turns the images off. In this case, we have the categories here. We can turn those on or off. I sometimes like to turn those off, especially if you've got a blog that only talks about one category. There's no need to have categories in that case. Titles, we obviously want to leave the titles on. The meta is this part here. The meta, you can actually choose some options about the meta, or we can just turn the meta off altogether. But the options, you can have like a dash divider in there. There's a fair bit of minutiae that you can tweak on this. You can change you can turn the author on or off, the date. Sometimes it's good to turn the date off, or you could choose the last updated date. That might be a bit more helpful. So lots of ways you can customize that. But I think in a lot of cases, I like to just leave it nice and clean. Just have the title, the excerpt, read more. I think that is the best from what I've experienced, but you can play with that, especially if you have different authors on your blog. You may want to differentiate between authors. Okay, now the only other thing worth talking about here is the excerpt. By default, you've got 55 words on this excerpt here, so you can adjust that. It looks good by default here, but if you're using a different style, say you've got 3 columns, you might want to have less words. Totally up to you on that number of words. You can turn read more on or off, but I think leaving it on is a better user experience. So then let's move on to the design tab. Now we have covered a few of these things already. There's a few more things we can tweak here. We can add little borders to the top and bottom of the title there. That's 4 pixels you can see up the top, and 5 pixels down the bottom. I actually just like leaving that blank, so I'm just going to leave that blank. And you can set that to cross, just turn that off altogether. But there's different kinds of borders as well, if that's what you're into. What else do we have? Most of these things are fairly self-explanatory. There are a few cool background effects we can do. I'll show you this. So you can click on the background and you can choose color, gradient, or image. So let's go for an image and let's select a nice background image for our background. And so that puts a background image there, and you can actually choose whether you want it scrolling or fixed. And if you choose fixed, it gives you that really nice parallax scrolling effect behind the blog post. So that's pretty cool. And if you want to get even fancier, we could do the content background and go for, say, a color there and just add a bit of transparency to that color. And you could let a bit of that background through like that. So that's just using white. We could actually use a gradient if we wanted to as well and get an effect. So I could go white and say blue and get that effect and add a bit of a transparency to the blue. So that's quite cool as well. So again, don't abuse this effect and make it so garish, but definitely play around with it and get it looking how you like. So I might just use white and then just add a little bit of transparency. So maybe 0.75. So a little bit of that background comes through and then hit publish. Looks pretty cool. So now looking at our finished blog page, it definitely has a little bit of a higher production feel than your typical free WordPress theme. So this is really quite nice from Kadence. Very good looking blog page.
The other cool thing about this method is that this style is duplicated for all your categories. So if we go to our categories under posts and categories, we can see that if we look at, say, design, marketing, and clients, we can view these and it has the same layout. But in this case, only the design posts are shown here. And we can very easily go ahead and add these to our menu as well, just going into our customizer again under menus. This is the agency menu and we can add an item and you can add categories here. You've got categories and you can add, say, design to our menu. Let's pop that there and hit publish. Now when we reload our page, we can see that design is now part of our menu and all the design posts will end up popping up into this design category. So you can set up categories to match your website under posts and categories, just filling in this form and adding a new category, very easy to do. And then when you make posts, you can always go add new and post, and you'll get an option of adding the category to the post. You can see that when we create the post, there's an option there on that right menu for categories. All you have to do is tick the categories that apply. You can apply multiple categories to a post as well, so they can apply across different pages. So very flexible in terms of how you categorize your posts on your website. Now let's get to our second method of displaying blog posts. Now you may have noticed that if we click edit page, we can actually edit this page in the WordPress Gutenberg editor. So in this case, it looks completely different to what we just made in the customizer because Kadence has given us a different method of doing this. So they've given us a pre-designed blog layout that's been built using the Gutenberg editor. So this is what they've given us. We can see that it's got a slightly slanted divider there and there's an email form down the bottom. So you can add any content you like to this page, but to actually get this page to display, we go to our reading settings under settings and reading, and let's actually set the post page to blank here and click save changes. Now when we go back to our blog and we reload, we can actually see that Gutenberg design style page rather than the customizer design page. Now I actually don't want to lose the work that we did earlier, so I'm going to still stick with that blog design for this example. So I'll reload it and that gives us back our customizer design. But I will show you a little trick. We can go to our pages, all pages, and you may have remembered from earlier when I installed the Yoast page copy plugin, so Yoast duplicate post, that can actually clone pages and posts. So we go back to our pages, and what I want to do here is clone our blog page. So let's clone that one. And now we've got one that's called draft. So we can go ahead and edit that one. And we've got our blog page. And what we could do is rename all this and use it for a different section of the website. For example, I might use it for marketing news. I'm going to call this marketing, and I'll just call that the latest news. There we go. Now let's set up this page to use it just for marketing. So they've given us this latest posts block and we can customize this. So you can actually choose the category you want to apply. You can change the items and you've got a grid view and you've got a list view as well. So there's a bit we can do here. I'm going to just limit this to marketing. So I'll just type MA and select marketing there. And now just the marketing post will show up. Let's hit publish. There we go. Now we've got a page that is set up just for our marketing posts in this style. And we've got the email form below. I might actually remove that. I've shown earlier in a previous tutorial how to set up email forms, but I won't overcomplicate this tutorial. I'll link that tutorial in the description where I cover email forms if you're interested. And the nice thing with this is we can totally customize this in terms of putting any content we want onto the page, which is something we don't get using the customizer method. So we can add blocks here. I really like adding these row layouts and using the pre-built library with Kadence and adding content in. So you can totally customize this, get this how you want it to look. I'm going to drop that section down below the post, for example, and that looks pretty cool. Then it's just a case of
customizing these and getting that to look any information that you want to display on this marketing page, you can set that up. So let's hit update. They've also given us this title section. You can totally customize that however you like. It's not the same as using the customizer. We can even go into, say, the background settings, select a background image. Let's use that nice landscape that we used before there. And we can actually change the overlay there, set some opacity on it, and get some of that background coming through, for example. Just a little bit, I think looks cool. There we go. So I think you get the idea. You can customize this page to display whatever you like with the blogs, however you want. I might actually show you the list method as well, because that looks pretty cool. If we go to list, we can actually change to a list, but we want to change the image size to make that 50, and let's change the alignment to put the text there. So that's another cool way of displaying your posts. I kind of like the grid, so I'm just going to leave it as the grid, but totally up to you. I'm going to close out of that, and let's reload this. So you can see we've got our nice, slightly transparent title there. We've got our block that we just put down there to test. And let's go ahead and customize this and add it to our menu. So we've got our marketing in our menu. So let's go to agency. That might be different depending on your starter site, because I'm using agency, but the title will be different, but the method is the same. Go ahead and add our page. Let's add marketing news on there as well. So there we go. Rather than having it as marketing news, I think that takes up a little bit too much space. We can actually just call that marketing, hit publish. And now when we go to our page, let's reload this. We've got marketing in there as well. So we can use this style to make our blog posts. And we've also got the customizer style as well. So you're free to mix and match, use one or the other. You can actually add posts to any page using this method as well. So we're on the home page, for example. We can go to edit page. And on our homepage, we could display blogs. Say we wanted to display the latest post. Let's go ahead and add a block here. Let's add one after. Let's go ahead and add, so let's start with a row layout. I always find those are easier to set up. So let's go with a single column, and we're going to add something in there. Let's add the latest post. So search for LA. We can see the latest post there. There we go. We're going to use the list for this one. Let's just display one item. And we want to display the content, and we want to display the featured image. There we go. Let's make the image 50. Let's go with, and we want to go with large. There we go. Here I might actually put the text on the right. There we go. And let's make the image smaller, 50 or even 25. That looks pretty simple. Simple way of displaying our latest post. The other thing we might do here is just put a heading above that. So let's click on that one, make one before, and let's pop in a heading. There we go. We could do an advanced heading with Kadence blocks, and we'll call that latest post. And we want that in the center. There we go. And let's just pop a bit of white space above that as well. So let's insert before. We want to just get a spacer, SP, spacer divider. There we go. Let's update that. So back on our homepage, you can see we can add posts to any of our pages. We can build post layouts using the customizer, and we can also build post layouts using Gutenberg editor. So hit like if this has been useful. One other thing we should touch on before we wrap this up is the actual posts themselves. So if we load up a post, we can go to our customizer, and we can actually customize the posts themselves using a similar method. So we go to blog posts, and this time we're going to do single post layout. So they've got a couple different layouts that we can use for this. We can put the title on the top. We can put the title on the top of the post there like that. I like this method. We can display breadcrumbs. We can turn the categories off. This is all exactly the same system as we use to display on our blog page, but this is only applying for the post page. You can see here we're using a narrower format, but there's several formats we can use. We can use a wider one if we like. I like the narrow one. And the other thing we can do is we can add sidebars on there if we want to use sidebars. And the other interesting thing is the featured image position is behind the title there. We can just put it above for something a little bit more conventional, for example. And we can also use different ratio images. This is set by 3:2. We can actually inherit the actual original aspect ratio of the photo if you want to do that. I think that can look good sometimes as well. And we've got a few toggles that we can turn on and off for the post design itself. So we can actually have related posts down the bottom. If you want to turn those off, you can turn those off. We can turn the comments off as well. And then we've got the navigation, previous posts, we can navigate around, and you can turn that on or off if you like as well. I like to turn that on. The other thing we should do is customize our meta there. So let's scroll up and we've got meta. We can customize what we want to show in there. We can turn the author off or the date, for example, or we could just turn the meta off altogether. I like to do that. And let's go ahead and click publish. The other things we can do under design, let's go ahead and add that cool background in like we did on our post page. So let's put that image and select that nice background image on the background. That's the actual content background. So I'd rather just use something fairly simple in that case. Just use a soft gray for the background. And the actual site background is where we want to apply that image. So let's apply the image there. So there we go. I wanted that to be fixed to get that nice parallax scrolling effect. There we go. And what I wanted to do with that content background is add just a little bit of transparency to that background. So let's change this one here. Let's make that 0.85. There we go. So we've got a little bit of transparency. I think that looks kind of cool. We can see a little bit of that background image popping through, but we don't compromise the readability of our post, which is the most important thing. So that pretty much wraps it up. If you're interested in learning more Kadence skills, I've done other Kadence tutorials. Probably the one to start with is the basic Kadence setup tutorial. I'll put that right there if you want to check that out. But I've done WooCommerce and I've done header tutorials as well if you want to learn more about those. So check those out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.